Hi, welcome to this presentation around circular designs, repair cafes, what is happening there on policy, but what's also happening on the ground. What we see particularly in Europe is increasing drivers, around circular economy driven out of the European Green Deal, but also an increasing consumer agenda that I will talk about a little bit later. As part of this, progress, there are, goals to extend the life of products through promoting repair and other strategies. So what we're seeing really at a European level is a sort of broadening out of the focus around sustainability and circularity in products, from really the initial focus around packaging and electronics and automotive to now bringing other categories like fashion, fast fashion, textiles, construction products. And what we're all seeing is a sort of changing environment where particularly the previous focus on energy related products, particularly the focus on reducing energy consumption, is now broadening into potential requirements around different aspects of circularity. And that very much aligns with the same standardization around materials efficiency. And SEN really have set up, a series of working groups, as many of you will know and will be involved in, around different aspects of circularity. It's been termed materials efficiency, but in effect, one could argue these are strategies related to product circularity. But the most recent development has been a new working group around circular design of particularly products. So, as many of you will be aware of and involved in, there is these series of standards that were developed, and launched around 2019, 2020, really starting to bring in a focus around strategies around remanufacturing, repair, etc. And what we're also starting to see is proposals out there, for certain product categories where we may start to see repairability, in classes starting to emerge on labeling alongside and within maybe energy labeling. So this, as we start to move forward into this agenda, there's going to be more visibility around this topic. Moving away from some of the concepts of on a much broader level, challenges around built-in obsolescence that has emerged much more visibly over the last sort of 10 years. And building on this, what we're seeing is various initiatives and countries starting to take a more proactive position on these issues. So France has developed a repairability index that, really, places a premium on different levels of repairability, and is presently applied to a series of products. But also this repairability index from France has been picked up in European discussions. Within the UK, we've seen in the energy-related products policy framework document in November 2021 that there is, circularity is becoming, another element of the discussion alongside in reducing energy consumption, energy efficiency. So a number of the issues like spare part availability, repair information will also become more important within the UK. On a broader level, what we've also seen recently is a proposal for a directive, effectively around the repair of goods, importantly and in a sense, interestingly, coming from DG Justice and Consumers, so much more consumer facing than DG Ent or DG Environment. And really, this is sort of bringing out issues of the importance of repair, from a consumer perspective, but also, the highlighting of the importance of many consumers throughout Europe, including the UK in this context, in terms of the desire to have products repaired rather than to replace products. So this is emerged particularly from a trend initially from the US around right to repair, around automotive, that has really started to be weaved into the Circular Economy Action Plan, to the first one in 2016 and separately Circular Economy Action Plan number 2. And this is really looking to tackle a number of, a lot of the waste-related issues. So right to repair is being seen as part of a sort of suite of measures that the Commission is looking at, alongside the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products, proposed regulations covering different product categories, but also work around consumers and the green transition and tackling issues to do with greenwashing and misinformation, if you like. But this proposal starts to tackle some of the use phase issues and concerns from a user perspective. So a lot of this, from a policies perspective, really is around thinking about how we shift to repair away from replacement. So how we repair to enable product life extension. And this, part of the panorama about this is how we tackle this within legal guarantees or beyond legal guarantees, i.e. when warranties, etc., have passed. So really, the goal is to shift the focus and make repairability more attractive over replacement. So proposals really sort of trying to suggest that sellers will have to repair if it is cheaper or as costly as a replacement. So they're really trying to, enable this product life extension through repair rather than the consumer having to buy a new product. And what we're seeing, in the aspect of beyond legal guarantees or warranties, is we've got 3 areas that are being looked at: a European repair information form, an obligation to repair and inform, and an online platform. So if you look at the information form, well, this is a proposal that that the consumer will have the right to request a repair form or a form from repairers with a series of standardized data, and that the conditions that sit within this repair form should remain valid for 30 days. So there's going to be more request for information from repairers that consumers should be able to access. There will be potentially this producer obligation to repair, goods, and an obligation to inform through this information form. And this should be for free or for a price. And I'll come back to, for free and some discussion, particularly around repair cafes. And essentially, this whole process would be enabled by an online matchmaking repair platform where consumers in member states will be able to search out local repairers and request that information. But also they will be able to find resellers and buyers who are providing refurbished goods. Now, refurbishment, is one of those R terms that, there's often some gray areas, but we're starting to see some sort of clarification of the definitions coming out in CEN and ISO documentation. So if we come full circle and go back up again, if you like, without mixing metaphors, and we look at this sort of idea of the circular economy and the idea of biological and technical systems within that, we start to see that the thinking in circularity terms and at a product level is much more, let's say, evolved and grooved in the technical system side. So, around, electronics and manufactured products rather than some of the more natural-based materials. What we have in terms of standardization is we had the first circular economy standard within a European context, and actually globally is produced by in the UK by BSI, BS 8001, which provided a set of guidance for companies in terms of how they tackle circularity in their organization. In fact, the first circular economy law in the world was actually in China back in about 2007, 2008. But this was the first specific standard that was launched. What we've seen, following that, launching circa 2018, 2019, is ISO TC Technical Committee TC 323, that really, is a technical committee charged with developing standardization within this area. And, as been stated, and I've been heavily involved in this from a UK perspective, this is the start of a new set of standardization. So we are still at a relatively early stage on the standardization process at an ISO level, but also in parallel, there is IEC activity going on. There's a series of standards that are in development, and the first three standards here, are due to be published at the end of Q1, Q2 next year. So we have the main, if I look at as a core standard, or looking at terminology and principles, that is, the 04 standard. The 10 standard, if you like, is around guidance on the transition of circular business models, and the 20 standard there is around measurement and assessing circularity. Having been quite heavily involved in this, it's been quite a challenging process with, whatever 180 people involved in this, or the 180 ISO countries, with different experts with different understanding of circularity. Some still thinking that circularity is about recycling, through to much more sophisticated thinking, with challenges around, academic views versus practical business views on this. And I would say, just being diplomatic about this, these first standards that will be published will be at an early stage. And let's say, I'll leave you to read between the lines, but pretty well immediately these standards will be launched. There will be a kicking off of a review process. So this is start of a process. There are other standards in development, and what may be of particular interest, the most perhaps most important one to keep an eye on, is the standard on product circularity data sheets, because this will have some relationship in some form to digital passports. It isn't a substitute, but there is a relationship there. What is happening at the end of this month in November is there's the kickoff of CEN TC 473, which is a European standard on circular economy that we and I will be co-leading UK delegation on this. So if anybody is interested in this, please contact me, because we're really looking for industry engagement, particularly because we've struggled in the TC 323 to have substantial industry engagement, and this is really important in terms of the practical implementation challenges that companies face, and making sure the standards are fit for purpose. And as we mentioned previously, there are these materials efficiency standards that many of you are well aware of, that are important guidance on specific strategies around product circularity. There are multiple series of standards emerging around the area, in different, focusing on different areas in different sectors. And it's quite frankly, quite difficult to, even as somewhat of an expert, to keep track of this. And I'm also hearing this back from industry as well. Particularly the avalanche of policy making around circularity and standardization, particularly coming from Europe. What we also have in the working group 8 standard is a standard that's particularly focusing within SEN on product-based aspects of circularity, and there is much more substantial industry engagement in this standard than, for example, the TC 323. And so this is about providing practical guidelines and guidance to companies around how they deal with circularity in design and development. And so there's useful information within the standard that is in development, and useful tables to help companies think through a number of the issues. This is just, for example, one that I pulled out that is a quite useful matrix to start to think through issues. There are, of course, definitions around what is meant by narrowing material flows, slowing down material flows, and closing material flows. But essentially, one of the challenges, however, with this particular standard is when it started, the focus was on energy-related products, but with the European Commission, through the Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation, broadening out their focus on different types of products, the challenge for this standard, which is focused on all products, all sectors, is to start to sort of make it applicable to all products, all sectors. So it's, at the moment, there's still some sort of emphasis around electronics ICT, but that will need to be broadened out. One of the challenges, however, is there is all this growing discussion around circular design, but but indeed there are existing standards around eco design. The two current standards are the IEC 62430 and the ISO 14006. They're really are much more the IEC standards about how to do eco design at a sort of design and development level. And the second one there is around management systems to manage this. So eco-design is a broader concept in circular economy, circular design, in my opinion, and there's a need to sort of align these two standards. In my view, circularity is one part of a broader eco-design approach, but you've got others, particularly that come maybe from outside the business world, that think of circular economy as the bigger concept, which it is at a conceptual level, and then how eco-design fits with this. But anyway, there's a need to, make sure that we haven't got duplication, we've got some consistency going on in standardization. And I think the next area that we'll see, particularly in the product area, that we're going to see more activity terminology, need to think through is what regenerative design means. So this is something that has come out of agriculture and perhaps more on the building side, but we're starting to see, how can we sort of learn from nature? We have subcategories like biomimicry, what might self-healing, materials look like, et cetera, et cetera. So this is going to be another terminology that emerges, and this is something that we're looking at with a PhD, who fortunately already has a PhD and is very closely connected to business. What we found from work we've been doing looking at product circularity, which you could say AKA circular design, is things are less evolved than perhaps some of the think tanks might tell you. The challenges about implementing circularity are, and the barriers are around cost, around maintaining functionality and product performance and consumer expectations, and some issues around aesthetics. And the practicality of this from 21 depth interviews we conducted across industry, from startups to transnationals, is that very few companies have grooved approaches to measure circularity at a product level. You know, there is a lot of confusion around tools out there, which are the most appropriate tools to use. And the reality is, for those companies who are really thinking about circularity in their products, they are really at the level of, how do we incorporate recycled materials? How do we incorporate bio-based materials? You're seeing fewer companies that have evolved models, particularly looking at, you know, the use phase and beyond. So, you know, designing proactively for disassembly, setting up new business models for take back and repair and remanufacturing, for example. So if we come into repair cafes are civil society driven initiatives. They're since community workshops driving repair. And on a macro level, they're sitting somewhere between circular society and society in the economy, in that they're about repair, but they're also around community development and community empowerment engagement. And they very much fit within thinking around, you know, within these issues. And indeed, this is a book that I did back in 2018, and we have chapters already on repair cafes. So essentially, if we're looking at product circularity, this is really about, you know, much more of a discussion about how we, you know, extend and retain value in our products, components, and materials, and not about waste. So it's about shifting the thinking. We've got, you know, many R's, you know, multiple R's that are out there that, you know, and multiple schools of thought, but there are different sub-strategies that relate to product circularity. And as mentioned earlier, we've started to see this emergence of, you know, an NGO movement initially around, which still exists, around right to repair, and that has influenced policy. There's now nearly 3,000 repair cafes around the world, with the vast majority of them, 80 to 90% being in Europe, but growing numbers in Australasia and the US. And in the UK, we have maybe 250 to 300, with you know, quite specifically about 100 in Wales. And the Welsh government has really stimulated a lot of activities around circular economy, and actually funded a core secretariat to develop and run these 100 repair cafes in Wales. And indeed, the Welsh government is taking, you know, some proactive initiatives around looking at policy in this space. So recruiting very recently a policy lead. And so you have these cluster of repair cafes in Wales, much more, you know, intense, if you like, than other parts of the UK. And they're really undertaking, you know, a substantial amount of activity. And so the repair leads to, you know, diversion from landfill, and it also leads to carbon savings. What we've also seen very recently is that HP in the US have actually launched their own repair cafe linked to the community of boys, where they're bringing in staff to start to do repair, you know. And this is, as I understand it, initially part of a community engagement between HP and their community, but maybe indirectly it's also starting to raise awareness of repair and build repair skills within staff members, perhaps in preparation for changing policy globally. So again, repair cafes bring together economy and society, and they're very much, yes, about repair, but they're also about community. As somebody stated in one of the events that we ran, you know, shouldn't there be a repair cafe in every community with friendly people, you know, helping to extend the life of products? So I know a bit about this. Apart from doing the first global research in this, I actually founded and chair a repair cafe in Farnham in Surrey, where we're upwards of 88 sessions, nearly 5,000 visitors. We're over 2,000 repairs. We retain a 66% repair rate, substantial landfill diversion and carbon reduction, and also retain a very high level of customer satisfaction. But we also, by people extending the life of products, this is also enabling people to, particularly older generations, to not have to invest in replacing a product and buying new products. So we've had upwards of over £170,000 worth of savings to the citizens of Farnham. So you start to look at this as just one example, and then you start to think about 3,000 repair cafes around the world. You start to see the sort of potential impact that repair cafes are having. What we now see is essentially that we've become part of the town itself, and we're integrated into, the town brochures and material that goes out to all residents. What I've also started to do as part of our activities is to develop a greater Surrey repair cafe network of a number of repair cafes, is simply whereby where the repair cafes are sharing knowledge from us as being quite advanced, further down the line, maybe 80 sessions, through to startups, where we start to share knowledge and experience about the issues involved in running repair cafes, which is actually providing and highlighting a number of issues. What we saw through a survey that we undertook in relation to key issues being faced by repair cafes in the UK, where we had 63% of responses, is a series of issues and motivations related to repair cafes. For example, this listing here, I won't go through it. Key issue there is this is a sort of a ranking, but we start to see, gaining insurance is much higher up the agenda for startup repair cafes, because insurance companies are newer to repair cafes. They look at electricals and they look at risk. And so a number of these startups really need to provide data and due diligence on what they are doing to ensure that they have appropriate systems in place. They do PAT testing, the volunteers are appropriately skilled and trained. And the sort of key thing is, within repair cafes, you have, often retired or semi-retired people that have a lifetime of skills and knowledge. So they're bringing those skills and knowledge to repair cafes. And that's why you see such high levels of repair activity. We have 63%. The Repair Cafe International Foundation, the figures they have related to their data say 63%. And that is in line with the global surveys we've done. So what I've done in closing is, there are tremendous opportunities perhaps for people to build knowledge in this area by joining local repair cafes, because particularly for this conference, electrical, mechanical are often big product categories that we see products coming in. So it's a good way to build knowledge, network with other people if you start to see repair becoming more of an issue. And it's also an interesting part of community engagement, because we will see more policy emerging over the next 3, 5, 10 years in this space. What I did just for the purposes of this conference was to go out to our repairers to say, well, actually, what design improvements could be made to facilitate repair, and we crowdsourced some ideas. I'm not going to go through every single one of these points, because I believe that you have this in your pack. You have the slides in your pack. But just for example, some of the points I'll pull out was: stop inventing new fasteners that require specialist screws, cease using security type screws except where it is particularly dangerous components. Stop implementing glued shut housing so you can't physically open a product without breaking. Design clip together casings so that they can be sprung apart. Stop using cheap plastic components for regularly used door components like in microwave ovens. So there's a series of things that, and knowledge that's sitting with these repair cafes that, you know, one can tap into, and maybe setting up joint projects to build knowledge. We see, to be blunt, very few products coming in that are designed for repairability, but you know, let's say the writing is on the wall. You know, that will take time to feed through and work into design and development, but perhaps this is an interesting area to keep an eye on. So thank you very much. I hope this was a useful presentation. And if you have any short, succinct questions or thoughts, please feel free to email me. So thanks very much, and hope you found it useful.